today we have a surprise for you guys. Today we have Laurie Robinson here. Laurie is with Laurie Robinson Designs, and she will showcase some modeling techniques related to organic modeling for us. From everything I've seen, Laurie is a fantastic designer, great designer, really. And there's much we can take away from her. Laurie actually won the Gemvision design contest, if you did not know. She had a stunning pearl pendant that had some organic modeled leaves and flowers. If you'd like to see it, you can go ahead and follow her on her Instagram at Laurie Robinson Designs. With that said, Laurie, welcome. Great to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, again, we can't wait to see what you have for us. If you do have questions about the software or questions for Laurie, I'll be present in the chat, so please ask away. So with that said, Laurie, I will go ahead and pass you the controls so you can share.
Okay. Okay, can everyone see? You can see, right?
It says it started, so let's see if it comes up. There it is. So yep, we can.
Okay, so I thought I would model something kind of similar, well, flower petals and leaves, just to showcase some of the techniques that I use to make the organic forms in the pearl. So I already have an image here, and usually I would, if I'm generally working freelance, so like if somebody wants an organic element, if they don't have a sketch, then I usually will just Google, you know, some kind of stylized clip art image and use that as a base or as a guide. So that's what this is here. And I'm going to use sub-D tools, which are over here. And there are probably 1,000 different ways you could do this. So just keep that in mind. But I'm going to start with the truncated cone shape. And I've already done this, so it's already set to the number of faces that I want. So and this is pretty I'm just trying to get a general shape here when I'm starting. And I'm going to go back and forth, probably mostly between perspective and front mode. And then I'm going to toggle a lot between flat and smooth mode because I like to push and pull the surfaces in flat mode a lot. I think it's just easier. And you can also see if things are starting to intersect in a weird way. So first, I'm just going to get the general shape here. And in order to select vertices and edges and faces, you can just hold down Control-Shift and point and select any of the parts of the sub-D object. But I'm going to use the selection filter right here. So, and I have sub-D objects turned on, and I'm going to turn on points or vertices, edges, and faces. Now just kind of shift things around so that this shape is generally beginning to take on the shape of the flower petals. And obviously it looks a lot different between flat and smooth mode, but you just kind of have to believe that eventually it's gonna look the way you want. So this is
It always helps to have a guide, kind of like you do right here. And Julie did ask if is that the Rhino 7 sub-D toolbar. It is, Julie. Yep.
it.
You can turn it on if you just type toolbar in the command line, and it'll open. You can select the sub-D and just toggle it on.
Yeah, sub-D is a lot of fun. I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm glad you're showcasing it. It's one of my favorite commands now. So
Okay. All right. So now it's generally sort of how I want it to be. I'm just going to chop these back 3 faces off because I don't need them for anything. And I do like to start pretty simply and then add edges and other things that I might need, so that at least I'm starting from something simple, and then, you know, I can, if it gets more complicated, at least I'll have an idea of why that is. And so I'm just gonna close this up. I'm gonna use the bridge tool, or the command, which is right here. I'm just gonna select one set of the edges first, and then and up here, obviously, you can create as many segments as you want. I only need 2. And then if I toggle, you'll see that it's not actually a closed form. So you just have to stitch these together. But it's not really obvious where the vertices are. So I'm going to just pull these out a little bit so we can see where the holes are. And then I'm going to use stitch right here. I'm also like a typer of commands, so if I'm not seeing clearly what I'm doing,
I am too. I think that's one of the easiest ways to kind of understand and learn the command. So I
yeah.
applaud you for doing that.
Well, I started just with Rhino, so I don't know, maybe. And then when you start adding, when you work with plugins, the easiest way to find what you're looking for is just by typing it. Honestly, you have to spend a lot of time looking around toolbars and menus and things. Okay, and then finally, just gonna add some inset edges at the top. So this is where, like, just adding a little bit of complexity gives you a little more control and definition over the sub-D surface. So I do want group mode. Okay, so from the front, just look again. It really is looking pretty vague at this point. But I'm gonna basically, I'm gonna do the same thing to all 3 sides. In order to differentiate the petals, I'm just gonna pull the top up and then pull the whole side out. And I'm gonna do it 3 times, just the same on all sides. Just here's where it's good to go back and forth between flat and smooth mode, because it looks really fine when you're in smooth mode, but you can see that these are you know, possibly going to intersect in a strange way. And I don't actually know how terribly this would affect manufacturing, but I'm just going to assume it's better not to have faces and edges like going all bananas.
Yeah, you're definitely, excuse me, you're definitely right. Whenever you have those faces kind of overlapping, sometimes you'll get back face surfaces, which when you convert it to a mesh, sometimes lead to coplanarness and stuff like that. So it's great that you see that.
Well, it is, I don't have a printer and I don't work in a factory or anywhere that's producing the actual models. I used to do casting of my own waxes, but it's a little bit tricky when you're disconnected from the end process. So I just err on the side of like not, of making them tidy when possible, if you're going to hand it off to somebody else. So anyway, so now I'm gonna, so one thing that's nice about sub D, and I'm gonna make a little comparison to Clayu, is that you can just apply regular Rhino commands to sub D, and you can snap to sub D models. And it's just a little more intuitive if you're used to using Rhino. So I could just type in extrude surface, but since this isn't a super accurate process, I'm just going to use this little ball here on the gumball, and I'm going to just drag this up. I'm just kind of trying to loosely match this point. Now I'm going to extrude the side in just the same way. And then finally, just to give a little more definition to the petal, I'm going to insert an edge loop all the way around the extruded part. So I'm going to just select the edge, and then I'm going to use select edge ring. And you can kind of see it just is looking more defined. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of like quickly do that to the rest of it. I don't really have anything about what I'm doing here that's new from what I just said, so but I don't want it to be like crickets. Sorry.
You're doing great.
Thanks.
I always love to see how other people model in sub D and even Clayu, because I personally probably would have done each petal separately, but having it done like this probably gives it so much more definition, you know. Julie said she's just mesmerized. Okay.
Julie, you are so enthusiastic. I love it.
I know, I love Julie.
Okay. Yeah, I as I said at the beginning, you could easily kind of model these separately, but I think sometimes when you start with like a primitive shape, you can when the individual shapes are stuck to like a common body, it's sometimes easier to control them and also make sure that they're not like getting so thin that they will fail when you manufacture them, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Because mine would have more than likely been too thin, and then I'd have had to sub D offsets, you know. And I love the fact that you toggle between edge and smooth. I find myself doing that quite often.
Yeah, it's hard to see otherwise too, I think. Okay, so as I'm sure everybody can relate to, I could like stand here and shift things like fractions of millimeters for like the next week. So I'm gonna try and really control myself and not get too carried away. But at this point, I've sort of like created the 3 individual pieces, and maybe just I'll switch to a different. So you can see that it's not it's pretty easy to do that. And then now I would just refine it a little bit more. So I'll just add edges only where I need them. Again, just so I'm not like creating a bunch of weird intersecting areas.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to being the perfectionist with sub D. I could push and pull points for hours on hours.
There was somebody you had on, I forget his name. I think he was German, possibly. And he was talking about like tracking how many mouse clicks. And like for some reason that really got into my head. And I'm like, I would actually probably be appalled with how many mouse go on.
You and me both. Trust me. I think that might have been Uwe.
Yeah, that's who it was. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is try and put this crease into the front petal to make it just stick. So I'm gonna use the same edge ring command that I used before. I'm just gonna go horizontal. Or yeah, no, I guess I did that last time too. And you can change your offset mode up here from absolute to proportional. And I'm usually just using proportional. Okay. And now I will add a bevel. So in order to kind of like push that edge in, I'm going to create 2 edges right alongside it that will keep the rest of the surface on the plane that it's on now. So that command is right here, sorry. And I'm just going to select these 2 edges because I don't need the whole ring to be selected. And you can change, you know, the offset mode and also the number of segments. So, and then I'll just grab these 2 and pull them in here. Now it's sort of beginning to have that tulipy. And then I'm gonna just, yeah, the top has this little swoopy. I don't need to create a bevel up here because I have these edges that I can use. There are enough edges up here.
So Bill had a good question. He said, is there a slide command for moving a loop of edge without distorting the shape too much?
Yeah, there is that exact thing. It's right here. Slide mesh. I can let's just do that. So you can just like you can like double click to select the whole edge. And so now that I have that selected, I can just use that command. You can see the effect it has. Does that answer your question?
Yep, I think that's what he was looking for. It kind of got frozen for a second, but yeah. So the whole idea with sub D is each surface influences the next, the next, the next. So sometimes you don't want to move the original shape, and you just want to manipulate, the current face or edge. So that you can run that command, or you can add more loops in there to where whenever you pull the loop you need to adjust, it only manipulates one or two down.
Yeah, and you can also just select edges and pull them. You just kind of have to remember that it's essentially fabric. So if you're pulling one place, it's going to affect something else inevitably, which is fine. Usually you just have to check that it's not like completely distorting something else unintentionally.
It's a great analogy. Most times I tell people it's similar to clay, like when you do that, but fabric is even a better one because whenever you pull the fabric, it kind of pulls further down the line too. I love that analogy.
You can add. All right. Let's not get lost. Okay, so I'm going to just add one more bevel on this side too. Okay. And now I'm just going to work on the bottom a bit. I'm going to scale this. And up here, actually, sorry, let me just look at it from the front. This has a little bump out, so I want to make that kind of like a sharper edge. And there are a couple ways of doing it, but I'm just gonna bevel it, see how that goes. And the nice thing is you can always just delete it if it looks dumb.
I love your use of the bevel command because typically I only use that whenever there's like a hard edge and I want to smooth it, but you're doing it to add extra loops, and I never thought of using it that way. So that's fantastic. I would sit there and just keep adding seams,
Yeah.
just
I took a Udemy class. Are you familiar with it? Just to like get you know what, I shouldn't maybe talk, I forget who the instructor was, but we built like an airplane seat. And so sometimes actually it's completely unimportant what you're building. But it's kind of interesting to see how other people use tools and then kind of imagine how that would apply to jewelry making or whatever it is.
Yep, exactly.
It's all about beveling. As you can imagine, like seat cushions have to look like puffy little seams. Whoa. Okay. See, I wasn't paying attention. I got all carried away. Oh, you know what? That must have happened when I was in the front view. See, gotta just keep turning it around, otherwise bad things happen. Okay. It's pretty good. And then just, I don't know, look around and make sure that you're having weird intersections like every few minutes. It really pays to do it while you're in the moment. Okay, I'm just gonna. Okay, that's basically the idea. Like I said, you could spend a lot of time getting it just right and just so, but you know, I always forget these things are like so tiny, and really these details go unnoticed by the majority of people. Okay. So then now you can squish this a little bit if you want to, or, you know, whatever. I'm going to actually just I'm going to move on to the stem, and then I'm going to do the leaves. I'm going to do them all a little bit differently. So I'm going to lock this layer so that I don't do anything to it. And for the stem, I'm just going to use a curve. And I'm going to make sure project is on so that it's planar, and it doesn't really matter too much. Just you want a general shape. And then I'm just going to pipe this. And I already did this today, so 3/4 of a millimeter is good. And then this is kind of a cool feature of sub-D. You can take any poly surface and convert it to sub-D, which I like a lot also. And I'm going to delete the input because I don't really care or want the poly surface confusing things. And you can change these settings, but this is generally fine with me. And then I'm just gonna, now that it's a sub-D surface, I'm gonna take some of these edge loops out because kind of like what I was saying before, I think it's better just to have less edges. You should only really keep the ones you need because it's just my general.
I absolutely agree with that. Less is more in sub-D modeling.
Yeah. Especially if you want something to flow nicely, having more edges just kind of makes it like weird and knuckly. But then you can just grab the whole edge loop and kind of pull it and push it and imitate nature to the best of your abilities. Oops, wait, I'm going to step straight for one second. I have a light sensor in my shop, and I don't usually stand this still, and it occasionally just turns off.
That's all right.
Okay. I'm not going to forget about these up here. Okay. So there is the stem, all done. And actually, maybe you can explain this to me. You can't select, doesn't seem like it. You can't select this object and then change the layer unless you turn these individual selections off, and then you can select the whole sub D itself, and then you can change the layer. I don't really understand that, but it is.
Yeah. So whenever you have a sub D, each face, each scene, each point is a different object, which is why it allows you to create that. So you either have to have the full object, like the whole object selected, or convert it to a poly surface, which is then one surface. Because if you have all the selections, then it's kind of like you're trying to change 130 different objects to a single color.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's what I thought. I mean, one advantage of working with Control Shift is that actually you can select, when you're not pressing those two, you can select the whole sub D, and you can, if you're doing something where you had like multiple sub Ds and you want to slide them around, it may be easier not to have these particular, the selection filter on. I have yet to like have that experience.
Yeah, and I mean, to each their own. Selection filters are just as good as Control Shift. When I model, I use hotkeys probably too much, especially whenever I'm demoing. People are like, "Well, what key are you pressing? So I should probably use selection filters, but yeah, it's kind of there's multiple ways to skin a cat, if you will. That's kind of a saying we have down here.
I actually think that is sometimes a hurdle, but or like you'll just learn one really specific way of doing something and you kind of get closed to the other ways you could possibly be doing something. Okay, so the leaves, I'm going to just use this command here, single sub D face, and I'm going to connect a bunch of them. And then I'm going to offset that whole surface because there's really not much to a tulip leaf. It's like a surfboard. So if you want to make the faces eventually become one connected face, you have to just make sure that multiple faces mode is on. Otherwise, you'll just be creating single faces. And even if you're connecting them at the vertices, they're not like going to end up joined, which isn't a huge problem, but it's just easier. And I have discovered though that it's really hard to see this on this white background, so I apologize for that. But so you just have to I cannot toggle into mode. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to start this again. So I'm just going to make quad faces, which are just faces with 4 points. And every time I finish the 4th point, I'm just right-clicking and then can start a new face. Oops. Okay. Here's an example of ending the command too quickly. But of course, there's always a tool to fix everything. So I'm going to just use append a sub-D here to make sure that my next face is joined. Okay, that should work, hopefully. Okay, so now this down. And I'm just going to move some of these points around to make a better shape. And sometimes I like to actually change the orientation to the object. So when I'm scaling things, I have more control.
See, now this is exactly how I would have built it. So that's great to see too, that you use kind of both ways. Yeah.
Good way. Okay, that's pretty good, I think. So now I'm just going to offset this surface, and I think you can just type that in, but this might be specific to something, but I'm not totally sure. Anyway, so here's the command, and selecting the surface, and then you can choose the distance. It's just like the regular old offset surface. You can see though that when you offset a surface, it automatically puts creases along the edges. So I'm going to take those off because I don't actually want those. It's possible that there's a way to not have that happen, but I don't know. So I'm just going to quickly select the edge loops and then use this remove crease on the front and back. Creases. Okay, and then I'm going to just put an edge loop in here so that I can control the middle of the leaf. And then you need to do much to this. You can just pull this in. It's very creepy. And I'm going to add just an edge loop down here because for some reason I just like this to be flat-ish. Okay, and now I'm not even going to take the time to make the other two. I'm just going to copy this one and then push it around so that it becomes the other two. So I'm going to mirror the first one. And then I'm going to put it on a different layer. And then I'm just going to hold Alt and make a copy of it over here. And then I'm going to put this one on its layer. And now I'm going to just lock these two. Whoops. So this is also where sub-D is so fun, nice, because you can just force it into any kind of shape. And it's especially with something where you're working a lot in the front mode, you just do want to occasionally check that it's it's not gone like off the rails in the Z direction. Maybe I'll just add one more edge here.
I'm like you, anytime I do some sort of leaf or flower, I always put a seam in the middle. That way I can give it some texture. So it's good to see that also.
In my last job, I was helping somebody, or we made some birth flower charms. So we had to do 12 different ones. And it was like it really, oh, see, it's exactly what I was talking about. I fell into my own trap. Okay, so something else that I learned recently is that you can kind of like force things to be planar by just entering 0 in here. You just have to make sure that they're not getting too crazy.
Yeah, why don't you show that from a side view so everybody can see? I think you might have done it a little bit quick, but what happened to her when she was pulling the points, right? One of them kind of went off planar to the flatness that she's trying to control. So if you click it, the little gumball and type 0, it'll pull that those faces flat.
I think just in proportion to each other, right?
Yeah.
Not like pulling them to a 0 point. It's just trying to make them as maybe is it that like the center point of them?
Yeah.
0. I don't know. It works well though. Sometimes it really does not work at all, and it's a bad choice. But mostly it works. Okay, and then I'm just gonna. I have no idea how long this is taking. So if I need to speed it up, just let me know.
You're doing good on time.
Okay, and then this one is a little bit easier. Okay, this is more or less just fine. Let's just look in a different mode and see. It's okay. This is maybe not subtle enough, but I'm not going to mess with it. But anyway, that's the basic gist. And now you can just move, you can slide the leaves into where we want them to be. I might bring this one forward. And I'll just push. Okay, so change that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Then you can take this and put it on a pendant, which I'm going to do. I'm going to make like a halo around the centerpiece, and then I'll just put a backing on it. But first you need to convert these all to poly surfaces. So that command is right here, and you can just select, oops, let me just unlock all of this. And then convert. Oops. Okay. I am not going to delete the input, because sort of like when you're working parametrically, usually it's a good idea to save the sub-D just somewhere in the file, even if you never manipulate it again, because you might have to, and it's foolhardy to delete it. And then
Save all my sub-Ds,
yeah,
no matter what. I always do it.
it's so easy, and not just do it. So then I'm just going to select sub-D, and I'm going to put them on this random layer and lock it and turn it off. There's, I guess that didn't get converted. All right. Is it? Or maybe. Is there not a copy of that? Okay, I'm just gonna undo that all for 1 second. Okay. Okay, there we go. And now I'm going to just cap this because it's just an open poly surface. So, okay. So now I'm just going to push this. Okay. Now I'm just going to push this back here. And to make it into a pendant, I'm going to just use a gem dummy, basically. cannot. Oh, there we go. So this menu is blocking my. Can I just drag this around? Yes, I can. Okay. All right, so I'm going to make an oval because I'm going to frame this tulip like in an oval frame. And I'm just putting the gem here. Sorry, I'm having a meltdown. Okay. I'm just putting the gem here so that I can use it for the halo. And I don't think there's one that's big enough, so I'm just gonna custom build it. It really does not matter, just as long as it's the right shape and size. How that looks. I think that's okay. Maybe I'll just. Okay, good enough. And then I'm going to use the halo command. The halo. Not a command I use very often, so sorry if I'm like. And height. Little thinner. Whoa, that is not what I meant.
I do that quite often, so it's okay.
All right. And let's just see how this looks. I'm gonna hide this. And that looks okay. Obviously, I need to just move the gem so that the halo is more. Okay, there it is inside. Maybe it could be like these could be squished together a little more. And okay, and then the final thing, actually, sorry, I'm just going to turn this image on, is to just make backing for it. So, sorry, zoom traffic. I'm going to grab this ISO curve and then just extrude. I think that's it. I think you just have to make sure now that everything is making contact. Like this leaf, it's dubious. But you know, you can also just now apply other dynamic commands to it. Why not?
Now that it's a poly surface, you can use commands with it.
Right. Okay, well, you get the idea. I don't think I need to like go bananas doing anything else. I am just going to put these all on the same layer now, though. And then just see how it looks. There we go.
Yeah, it looks great.
I'm gonna take, but
I will use your method to do flowers from now on. It looks so much better than mine.
You know, my most favorite one that I did was like chrysanthemum bulb. I don't know if you can imagine what those look like, but and I used a torus shape, and I put a lot of, I created it with a lot of individual edge loops, and then I like just
Extruded it.
extruded.
Yeah.
It looked really awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, but that's basically it. So there you
Hey Ted, Ted asks if you'll be able to access. So we will, you can reach out for a recording. You do have to own a license. I know you own a license, Ted, so yes. So you can reach out to info@Gemvision and ask for the recording. Other than that, it'll probably be on YouTube. So be sure to check that out too. Ted said it was a great lesson.
Oh, I'm so glad that you liked it, Ted.
Yep. I think Julie liked it too. Julie said she was mesmerized.
Great. Yeah. Well, it's
And Roma said more, please.
it really is super fun. Yeah. I mean, I guess I judge that by like how much time can elapse when I'm standing there pulling, pushing, pulling, but
Yeah, definitely. You can sometimes get lost in pushing and pulling. I do it every time I build. So
you know what? I set a timer, honestly, all day long. I do not allow myself to exceed 25 minutes in a stretch, because usually, in almost every case, if you just step away, even for like 10 seconds, usually like the fog lifts and you're like, oh, I'm actually doing that in a really stupid way. And I'm going to just go back, and now I'm going to do it the right way. So, and also, you know, like chronic computer fatigue is real. So you just have to like move away and then come back.
Yep, that's the truth right there. So Julie said, "Yay, Laurie." Do you think that you could do one of these sessions? You could give some tips on using curved blend. Yeah, sure. Then Roma said they want to see your chrysanthemum flower next.
Oh.
I love flower projects. So
I do have a picture of it if you want to see it.
yeah, let's see it.
Okay. All right. I'm not sharing, right? Or am I?
No, I stopped it. So you can reshare them.
Well, I will. Just gonna go into the depths of my files. Okay. This before the pandemic started, I was working pretty much at the bench, and then also doing some CAD, and then I got laid off. And then when they reopened, I have a bunch of school age people, so really could not leave the house. And anyway, I actually always kind of wanted to transition to freelancing CAD. So
It's truly the way the industry's going, you know. People spend time carving waxes and do all of this when they could have done a CAD and duplicated it 12 times, you know. It's just so much more efficient.
It is, it's true. The tricky part sometimes is like convincing people not to feel antagonized by it, because I don't know. I mean, I always sort of worked in shops, like doing custom in those shops, and it doesn't necessarily, it's not the warmest reception sometimes when you're like, you know, here's what I can do. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. But if you want to let me share again, I can.
Yep, you should be able to hit the share.
Okay. I don't even see how many. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so that's the chrysanthemum.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, that was a fun one. But you can see, even like I could have really gone a lot further here with this business, but just focus on the flower.
I mean, it
Look
really
away
is
from
great
this
though.
part.
I
Oops.
mean, all of those extrusions, man, moving those around must have been something.
You know what? This was really when I learned that it's not a good idea to have a lot of overlapping and intersecting pieces.
Yeah.
Usually that can be solved by just like chopping something in half and, once it's a poly surface. So anyway.
Well, thank you so much, Laurie. We appreciate you so much.
Thank
Roma said, wow, very talented.
you. Well,
Laurie, like Bo. Stop, Roma. You're too kind.
well,
But
I appreciate it. This was definitely super outside my comfort zone, but I now have done it. You're right. It's
yeah,
sad.
well, we appreciate it. And that the pendant that she sent in for the design contest was amazing and just blew us away. So we were like, we have to have her on.
What's funny? Just one final thing about that. I was like worried it was too heavy because I think sometimes, you think about like the customer and the price tag, and you're like, make this super thin. So I was interested that was commentary from both of you. So
Yeah.
it made me think a little bit about that. But I don't know, maybe someday I'll actually try and produce it.
Yeah. If you do, let us see. Are you a bench jeweler by trade? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Stone setter, everything.
Yep. Just sort of all around.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know what they say, bench jewelers make the best CAD designers. So.
Well, it does really seem to help. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that really, you can certainly just kind of like ram something through from concept to manufacturing, but I am finding that there's a special place for people that actually are goldsmiths or jewelers and then doing CAD, because you might just pay attention to certain things that I don't know that
Yeah, that other
the
people omit.
manufacturer might not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what we call it over here at Seller is the big screen syndrome. So when you're looking at something right on the screen, you're like, hey, yeah, this is big enough, don't worry. In actuality, it's like 0.2 millimeters. You're like, I don't know if that'll cast. So you guys have the knowledge of knowing, hey, this is manufacturable. So
Well, the only part where that's tricky is like if you're not working with like a domestic caster, because it really seems as if anything is possible at this point. Like I am super surprised sometimes what people can produce. So.
yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you all for joining. We appreciate you for joining. And if you would like a recording, go ahead and shoot us email info@Gemvision. Again, thanks, Laurie. We hope you have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Bye.